Welcome back. Residents in fire-ravaged neighborhoods in Los Angeles are, and you've heard this phrase before, picking up the pieces. But it's not just a catch-all phrase. Residents whose homes were burned down are doing precisely that, because that's all that's left, picking up pieces. One of them, I'm sad to say, is David Brancaccio. If you're like me, you have heard him on the radio many, many times as the host of the economics news show Marketplace Morning Report. He is one of thousands of residents of Los Angeles to lose their homes in this catastrophic fire disaster. David Brancaccio joins us now. David, I'm a great admirer of your work, but that's not why we're talking to you. You have a facility with observation and language. Explain to our audience what has happened to you and what you beheld when you returned to your fire-ravaged home.
It was a hard day, but when you see these statistics, like 16,000 structures burned in the Southern California wildfires, you can't get your head around it. So what I found in my neighborhood helps describe the disaster. Just one suburban block in Altadena, California, there's one house that's okay. There are 8 houses that are a mess, but probably salvageable. On my one block, 21 houses, all my neighbors, have lost their houses completely. It's quite difficult. It's quite difficult for people who, unlike me, for instance, had kids that they had to tend to. It's very difficult for others who were trapped in the actual conflagration and were evacuated. I happened to be on the East Coast at the time the fire broke out, so I didn't have to experience that. But what a lesson in the personal finances of picking up after a disaster I'm getting right now.
Talk to me about that lesson. What are you learning?
Well, I thought I knew a lot. I'd covered, for instance, a terrible wildfire that happened in 2003 in San Diego. I think it was 2,200 houses were burned. And my piece at the time for public television was about the 2 different kinds of fire insurance you can get. The kind you want that might be more expensive, that pays for replacing your house, or the other kind that isn't so good. Now, I didn't live in California here, Altadena. I didn't have a choice when I bought my house, by the way, 2 months ago. Closed on that house, which is now gone. But I had to take the inferior type of home insurance that will pay, but based on the depreciated value of the house. So here's the metaphor, Major. It's like this. Imagine a kind of insurance for your car. You have, unfortunately, a car crash, and the good insurance pays for you to get a spiffy, brand new whole car after the accident. The other kind of insurance is like, okay, your car was worth $35,000 new, but we're going to give you $2,500 because it's 8 years old and dented. That's the other kind of insurance. You don't pay that much attention to this when you're buying the coverage. Often your choices are based on how much you're going to pay for that insurance. And one of the great ironies that I've run into with this whole thing is I wasn't living in a particularly high-risk fire area. My insurance policy rates my risk on a scale of 1 to 10. My house was only 4, yet you've seen what the firestorm has done.
And David, talk to my audience about the practical difficulties you and your neighbors face. Let's say you're well insured. Let's say you have a nest egg that you can call upon, real financial resources, which some may have, others probably don't have. But let's say you have that. What are the practical difficulties of just getting someone where you are to begin the process of building something new?
Yeah, let's say you get all your permits and the EPA has cleaned out the toxics. And in our case, the disaster is so widespread, the county is working with the Army Corps of Engineers to clean out the debris, which is an amazing amenity, I guess you could call it. But where are you going to find a contractor when just in the fire that affected my house, 9,000 structures burned? I learned an interesting secret about contracting, which is, there's not a million contractors, but if you find one, many know how to remodel your kitchen or add on a den, but do not have experience in building from the ground up, which is the kind that you want. You have to watch out for fraud. There'll be people coming into the area, trying to sign people up for rebuilding, knowing they're desperate. And some may not have great pedigrees. I talked to a survivor of a terrible fire in 2008 in Santa Barbara, California. He rebuilt his house, but some of his friends signed up with the wrong contractors. One of those contractors, he told me, was now in jail for fraud.
David, what is the emotional bandwidth for you and your neighbors right now?
It's very difficult, but you know what? There's a kind of, in a weird way, a paradox of all this. I've lectured for years, done many stories over the decades about something called social capital. That's the quality of when people get out from their couches and come together to work on community problems. It's an actual asset. It's like saving money in the bank. Here's the practical example of how this plays out in your personal finances. Social capital. We found out that if our entire block can agree and everybody on the block can come together to discuss this and agree to sign the form to allow the county and the Army Corps of Engineers to do the cleanup instead of hiring our own independent contractors to do the debris cleanup, we get priority in the speed at which our properties are cleaned up. So social capital could actually lead to rebuilding starting earlier. The conclusion for me is that social capital is of real value.
Incredibly valuable perspective for us, David Brancaccio. Thank you.